Thank Jamie. All right. Good evening, and welcome you here on Scottish Summit. Um, you already know me. I'm Sergey, and this session will be about Azure, or how we prefer say in Scotland, Azure. And this session is where I want to show you some of the hacking techniques that may be used when you have your Azure deployment. Uh, and it's not it will work not because the Azure itself vulnerable, but because your deployment, your configuration may not be super optimal. And my goal here is to show you some of those not optimal steps. Um, Before I start the content, thanks to our sponsors, just because of them, not only because of them, of course, because of all of us, we have the conference here. But without sponsors, it's super hard to organize the event like this. Few words about me. So, what I do day to day. I'm an ethical hacker or secure or pen tester, if you wish. And I have some certifications like MVP, OSCP, CH, and a lot, and some other certifications as well. But you're probably here not to listen about my certifications, but you want to watch and see the content. One interesting thing, I was in Glasgow, which is Scotland, only once, and I was there exactly 1 year ago, and so that was my flight from Glasgow back home. Um, all right, so let's get started. One last thing before I start. Um, I prefer live demos, so you will not see a lot of slides here. I'm gonna show you demos most of the time. I will use slides just to show you where we are now, and it will be like a compass, indicating what scenario we're talking about. So that's my agenda. Here you can see on the screen the agenda. I will show you three scenarios when I have what I want to compromise when I have like on-prem AD with integration to Azure AD. I have virtual machines in the cloud where I have my legacy application, and I have modern application which is deployed in the cloud and use modern PaaS services. So let's get started. First scenario, we have on-prem AD and AD Connect as well that was used to integrate my on-prem AD with Azure. From here, let me jump to demo and show you some interesting things related to this integration, security aspects that usually overlooked. So when I configure AD Connect, I hope you already know how to do it, so it's pretty well-known operation. So when I configure AD Connect, one of the steps here, I must connect to my on-prem directory or to my on-prem directory. And to connect to my on-prem directory, I must have an account. So I must specify the account that will be used to access your on-prem AD. You can do it here if you click Add Directory. And here it will share the screen where it recommends you to create account for you automatically. So AD Connect will create and delegate permissions to this account for you automatically. That's pretty common configuration, and probably you're aware of this. And let me show this account because I have already my AD Connect configured. And here's my account that was created automatically. But what may be dangerous here? What may be dangerous? Not really dangerous, but what should you take care of? When you create this account, so when you create this account manually, or when AD Connect created for you, there's a few interesting things. If you enable some features like password hash sync, which is a highly recommended feature because it will allow you to synchronize hashes of password hashes from on-prem to the cloud. So if you enable this feature, then account will have some extra permissions. And you can see here what permissions this account will have if I enable password hash sync. And those permissions are replicate directory changes. So it means that this account will have permissions to replicate AD. Let me show you this real quick. If I jump to properties to my domain controller and see properties of my domain, I'm gonna find this account listed, and here are permissions. So this account has permissions to replicate directory changes. All right, so that's quite sensitive privilege. And you may say, wait a second, but when we allow AD Connect to create an account for us, we don't know the password. So it should be secure. Like, yeah, maybe there's a high privilege, but nobody knows the password. Yeah, that's correct. We don't know password. So AD Connect creates this account for us. But someone must know this password, because if AD Connect is going to use this account, it must know the password, right? So yes, AD Connect knows the password. Let me show you where this password is stored. If I go to Program Files and find a folder called ADSync, I can find here data, and here in data I will find ADSync database. That's for SQL Express. So when I have default configuration with SQL Express, and in this database I can find this database there. Let me connect to the database, and I'm going to show you how it looks like, how this configuration look like. Maybe that's the wrong name. Let me just check real quick. No, that's the wrong name. Let me copy this. Console S. And change this name. That should work. Yep. So let me check the database and find table there. And one of the table that I'm interested in called Management Agent. Let me select top 1,000 rows. Come on. And I want to remove some of the columns from output, and I want to keep just 2 columns of private configuration XML and encrypted configuration. So scroll to the right and look at this. So now I can see the account name, and it says, hey, we have a parameter called password, which is encrypted. So this parameter is not super straightforward to get this information. It's encrypted, and if I scroll all the way up to the right, I can find some encrypted values there. So password is there in the database, but it's encrypted. But if you are administrator on AD Connect, you can decrypt the password. Let me quickly show you this. There is a very simple tool called AD Connect Dump. You may find on GitHub, freely available, very straightforward. And if I run this tool with local admin permissions on the AD Connect server, I can get the username, of course, and the decrypted password. So that's the password that was encrypted. And so with this value, let me jump to client machine and open CMD here. Open CMD as an administrator. Open this. So in parallel, let me open another command prompt, but this time as the user, this MS oil user. So let me type the username and let's type the password. And let's type the password and click OK. So let me show you now some of the permissions. If I type who am I in my already open command prompt, I'm a user JDOM. So that's the user that logged into the workstation, to this workstation. If I try to see if I have any permissions on the main controller, access denied. All right, let's see another command prompt. Here, if I type who am I, I'm MSOL. And if I try to see the main controller root drive, also denied. All right, so no permissions on the main controller. But what if I open a tool called Mimikatz? By the way, you may tell me that Mimikatz will be detected by antivirus. Yes, I have a different session where I show how to obfuscate, but not here. So here I'm just using this Mimikatz. And let me type LSA dump. Oh, let's say dump dc sync and user trainer, who is my domain admin. And now I can see the password hash of user who is the domain admin. All right, let me now open Mimikatz in the command prompt, run Mimikatz there. Privilege debug. And now let's say secure, let's say ETH, which is pass the hash, user trainer, domain, my domain, which is compose.com, and /ntlm, which is going to be the hash that I found here. Let's copy this, paste here, and now I have third command prompt. Let's try one last time. Yeah, I do have access to the domain controller root. So it means if I know some of the, if I'm an admin on AD Connect, I can compromise the whole Active Directory. And so with this, I can become domain admin in this hybrid environment. So now I'm a domain admin. And I want to go to the next scenario where I have legacy application, which is not really legacy Jenkins, but I say legacy because I'm using here virtual machines, and I deploy Jenkins. I don't really care if it's Jenkins or something else. The goal is to just show you that I have a VM in Azure, on Windows, and VM on Linux. And I want to show you how can I compromise those VMs as well. But before this, let me jump back to my demo, because now I'm a domain admin, and I want to get into the Azure subscription. But as domain admin, I don't have any privileges in the cloud. Yeah, I'm a god locally, but I don't have privileges in the cloud. So let me show you what I can do. If I want to become not only domain admin locally, but with domain admin permissions, how can I become a more privileged user in the cloud? Before this, let me jump to one of the workstations and type this az count list -o table. So here I just want to see if I have any. Yeah, I have subscriptions in the cloud. And it just shows me this without any prompts and without any questions. Let me do the same on a different workstation. Let's see if it will work. Hopefully not. Yeah, it says, hey, please run AZ login. So you must log into subscription if you want to see. If you want to see your Azure resources, you must log into your subscription. I hope you know what the AZ CLI is. So that's a well-known tool that when I can control Azure subscription from command prompt. So it says, hey, you must log in. But for some reasons, it didn't ask me for this on the different machine here on this machine. That's why. That's because the token, when I successfully logged in, will be cached. And it will be cached in this folder in my profile called .azure. And if I'm a domain administrator, I can have literally any access to any workstation. Any level of access to any workstation. So what I can do, I can take token from existing machine where our cloud users, like administrators or developers, already logged in, and I can steal their token. And so just by the copying this .azure folder. Oh, by the way, let me just remove this. I need to exclude one file, this one, config. And let me zip it again. And copy this .azure to here. Let me remove this here. Now, if I extract those files. And let's try again. Let's say AZ account list table on different machine. Fingers crossed, it should give me access. Yep, now I have access. And now I can start to play with these cloud resources. Of course, it depends on the level of access I got from that machine, but I already have an access to the cloud at least. So now let's start to work with virtual machines. So first, what I want to do, I want to see those virtual machine lists. So let me show the list of machines. And now I can see a number of VMs. I'm interested in those two VMs, Jenkins master and Jenkins slave. So master node is Windows and slave node is Linux. So in parallel, let me just log into one of the virtual machines I have, and it will be Linux machine. That's my attacker machine. It's not Jenkins. So what I want to do, I want to log in into those VMs without username and password. How can I do it? Let me just show you that real quick. If I first, we'll show you on the portal. If I open the VM configuration and I want to connect VM, let's say using Bastion or RDP. If I click use Bastion, do I have any? Yeah. If I want to connect via Bastion, I think it's on a different network. Anyway, so if I want to connect via Bastion or RDP, I must know a username and password at least. And also, I must be in the same network, which is maybe a bit complicated. I don't know those credentials, but I want to log in. Let me show you how we can do that. For each VM in Azure, we have what's called run command. If you have at least reader permission on the virtual machine, you can execute any command on the machine with system privileges. And if I click there on command, I may find that I can run PowerShell script with local system permissions. I can run PowerShell on the Windows machine, or I can run Bash script, shell script on Linux machine. So if I run commands that will give me a reverse shell, which is well-known attacker thing when you get the remote access from the machine, when the machine itself, the victim machine, connects to the attacker. In this case, I can get access to those machines without any authentication. I mean, I can bypass any password requirements. Let's do it real quick. So first, let's start from Linux. I'm going to jump back to here. And now let's type this command. So this command will run shell script that will connect to my machine via port 444. That's for Linux. Let me run this command. Run that. And let's wait for the connectivity. Fingers crossed. And by the way, in parallel, let me open that for Windows because it takes some time. So I want to do the same for Windows. And maybe I already have a shell. Yep, I do. I do have a shell on Linux. If I type ID, I'm root. And I'm here on Linux and uname -a. And that's a slave node of, here we go, Jenkins slave node. That's a slave node. Maybe it's not that interesting like master node. So let me, still no connectivity from Windows. It might take a bit longer, than Linux. Hopefully it will work. I can double check, by the way, if I have any restrictions. Maybe I configure them, but I forgot to remove. Hopefully not. Let me just check networking, outbound. No, I should not have any restrictions, but I don't have the connectivity. That's odd. Still running. All right, hopefully it will give me that shell soon, since I don't have it. At least I have it on Linux. Hopefully we'll see. I will get it on Windows soon. So we'll check that in a few minutes. But that's how can I get access to virtual machines in Azure if you have at least reader permission. So let me jump back to the portal, let me show you this. If I look at the portal, here I must have permissions only to read. So if I go to roles and go to reader, permissions, and check compute, if I want to run commands, I just reader is enough. Reader is enough. Oh, still nothing. I need to double check what maybe my VM here that doesn't accept the port. All right. So in the same manner, Windows in the same manner. So that's how can we compromise the machines in Azure. Machines where I have a legacy application, and this legacy application may be compromised if someone at least has reader access on your virtual machines. And finally, we have the application, which is like a modern application, where we have multiple like services that use this application, that use multiple components. So first of all, it has front end on app service, and this app service connects to SQL database. But to connect to SQL database, it uses credentials that are stored in Key Vault. And credentials must also be rotated, because that's recommendations from Microsoft to rotate credentials. So here, for me, it will be pretty complicated to get to data. Probably my goal will be database, but it's pretty complicated to get into the database straight away. What may be the weakest chain link here? Probably the weakest chain link, at least I should check that, will be the key rotation routine. Because that's the screenshot from Microsoft website. If you want to use Key Vault, you should rotate keys and secrets, and so special function will generate a new secret or key and modify that in the Key Vault and in the database as well. Where may be the problem? So I may not have permissions to access Key Vault, but function has permissions to access Key Vault. And if permissions on function are not configured correctly, then I may, through the function, I may modify the Key Vault or get data from the Key Vault. So let's take a look at that. If I jump to back to demo, here's shell script. Anyway, that's the problem. So looks like it didn't execute command. Looks like something was stuck there. Yeah, that's a problem. Like when I run multiple commands, it may sometimes not execute all of them. That's why I didn't have a shell on Windows. Too bad. Anyway, so now let me jump to another workstation. And first, let me show it on a portal, and then I'm going to jump to the workstation. So first, let me show you the Key Vault. And if I go to Key Vault and secrets, where usually using secrets that are username and password are stored, my current user doesn't have permissions to see the secrets. Let me show you real quick. I will delegate permissions to myself just for the moment. Just to show you that those secrets exist. Let me just give list permission. And now we have, I can just show you here. You have pass and we have username. And if I click on them, I can even see the actual value. No, I don't see it. Anyway, so let me remove the permission. And now let's try to get those permissions, not the permission, but get the secrets, but from the function. So for this purpose, let me show you the function. A function was taken from Microsoft website, so that's like, you may call it official. And in that template that Microsoft recommends, we have two functions. First one will be triggered by event grid, so it may be, generally speaking, any trigger, or HTTP trigger, which is the most interesting for me, because I may run that manually just using the HTTP request. So what I can do, I can check if this function has permission, not permissions, has access via FTP. Because by default, any function application has FTP enabled. So that's the default configuration. If we did not disable this, what I can do, I can get not here. I can get publish profile where I also need to have read permissions, reader permission, and connector FTP, and upload any code I want that will modify the function and will run my code on behalf of this function. So let me do it real quick. I'm gonna open CMD. Let me do it. So first, I want to find the FTP URL of the function application. And let me copy this and open FileZilla. Connect to it. All right, so that's the URL. Then I want to get credentials. Here's the username. And here's the password to connect through FTP. All right, and now I can see here two functions. I'm interested in HTTP, so let's go there. And here I already did that. So I had run. So the code that will run called run.ps1. So I took existing one that was the initial one and rename it. And instead of initial, I add my own code that just take username and password from Key Vault. So I add my own code, and now I can just open PowerShell and just say, hey, make a request. So making a request, and let me in parallel show you if I go to actual function and I go there, click monitor. Logs. Oh, yeah. Come on. Welcome. Thank you. Do you want to show me what's going on? Oh, I already have the result. So there's a username from there and password as well. So username and password. And now with this information from database, I can try to connect to database. So first, let me connect to just configure database not very securely. Let me do it real quick. And this configuration is very common. That's the most common misconfiguration I find. So one of the most common configurations I find. So let me connect to that database. Let's say connect, database engine. I don't have it listed. So here's the address. And SQL authentication, web app, and password. And I can't connect from my on-prem environment. It says, hey, you must whitelist your IP address and you must sign in for this. All right, but let's try to do it from Azure, from Azure Virtual Machine. And look at this. That's working properly. And I can see database and tables here, and I can see that registration TBL. Why did it work? Because I had this configuration, allow Azure services and resources to access this server. That's very, very, very typical misconfiguration that I find very often, because quite often companies think, hey, probably it means that it's my Azure resources, like my virtual machines, will have access to my SQL server. Yeah, that works for me, so I want to keep it. But it is not yours. It is Azure in general. So if you connect from any region, from any country, from any customer subscription, or even demo trial subscription, it will be able to connect. Of course, you must know username and password, but Firewall will not block it because it will just allow all of the Azure addresses. So that's not super nice configuration. So let me turn it off. Now let's make it a bit more secure. So I want to say deny public network access, and here I connect my SQL database through private endpoint. So the configuration of that's out of scope of this demo because it will take too much time to show you this. But the idea of this, it means that we will connect to the database using virtual so the connectivity will be available only from virtual network. And so now let's try to connect to the database again from Azure. And look at this. So let's say, hey, you can't connect, and because public access is denied. All right, so looks like it's a bit better now. Um, now I can't connect directly to database, but what I can try to do. Let me get back to slides. What I can try to do. I know that web application use SQL as a backend. So for these purposes, um, web application must have access to database. What I can try to do, I can try to compromise the application, and from application, try to access database. So let's try that. Before this, let me open the actual application and show you that real quick. That this application working properly, use database, and if I say, hey, I want to register, Jamie, if you don't mind, I will register you. Name Jamie, and email jamie@camtosa.com. So submit. And yeah, that's working properly, and I should actually have this value in database at this moment after this registration. So now let's try to compromise this web application to get access to database. The web application is the same like function is the same like function, has by default FTP access. FTP access enabled. Come on. So FTP access is enabled by default. Now let me try to repeat the same steps, but this time for application. So let me get first the address, and let me get credentials, and connect through FileZilla as well. New tab. This one as well. Let's say connect. Now I can see there's a one pager, so there's only one page, which is FTP. All right, if this is FTP, what I can try to do, I can upload my own FTP code, and probably you know that FTP is executed on server. It's a server-side execution, so I can execute on the server my own code. Look at this. Now I have access to the actual underlying machine, and so I have a shell with underlying machine. By the way, I'm Russian. Maybe you noticed that. I'm Russian. So this shell is not super interactive. So let me just establish the better shell. I'm gonna create a better shell. Yep, this will be better. So now, let me check who am I, and I am the Apache user. So I'm not root. I'm just a low privileged user, and I want to connect to SQL. The problem is, to connect to SQL, I must install different tools like SQL CLI, MS SQL CLI, which is like cross-platform tool to manage SQL Server. But to install that, I must have root permissions or sudo permissions. I don't have any of those. But what I can try to do, I can use tools, SQL tools that don't need to be installed. One of those tools called uSQL GitHub. Now look at this. So universal command line interface for SQL databases. And if you want to try that, find releases and scroll all the way down, click next, and take this version, because the Azure web application, they have the older version of operating system, and so they do not work with the newer version of uSQL, but 070 working properly. So let me upload this uSQL to uSQL 7.0 to my victim machine. And now let's try to connect from this uSQL. And now I connected. Let's try to see tables. Scroll a bit up. I can see I have one table here. The second table is firewall rules here. And let's try see the table content. And look at this. So Jamie that was added a few minutes ago, he's here. So I can see the content of database. And now it means I compromised the database as well through web application. So I have a few minutes now. I think I have 8 minutes. So I will give you one last demo, then show you one more slide, a few more slides, and then you will have a few minutes to ask questions if you have them. So if you have questions, please start to type them, because we have 7 minutes now to the end of the session. So the last piece I want to show you here is called application gateway with WAF, because probably you notice that I have one more piece, and this piece should protect my application when external people try to compromise my application from outside, and they try to find vulnerabilities in my application. They may try to use SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and so on. Well-known the application level attacks. Let me show you what if somebody tries to do it. Where's my application? Oh, here we go. So you saw that it's working properly when I tried to add Jamie or someone else. But what if I try to run injection? So let's do it. Working properly. So that's my injection, and because of the injection, I got some information from database. So I get information where this page is stored. I also get information about database. It's called SQL exception-based injection. I also can see the SQL driver that was used, so I can have some information about this database. So we may have different injections. Some of them may give me information about the content database, so it depends on the injection. So now I can see that this application is vulnerable to SQL injection. Let me try to open the application, but this time protected by web application firewall. Let me run the same command, the same injection, and look at this. It says access is denied. I can try different attacks. I can try something else like script. Now the same here, so it's protected from different attacks. You may ask me, wait a second. So Microsoft has their own web application firewall? Really? They do? Why we haven't heard about the names of this firewall? Why it's only in Azure? Why we cannot have it on-prem? it is not their firewall. They use Smart Security, which is open source, well-known open source, but they have their rules which make them very, very powerful. So let me show you one last thing here, one last demo, one last thing before I jump to the slide. I tried to run the fuzzer that the goal of the fuzzer is to find the statement that may bypass firewall, web application firewall. It's called Rough Ninja. If you wish, you may find it. You may try to find it yourself. So, and this fuzzer just tried different statements and try to find the statement where this application may be vulnerable. And look at this. On the right, you may find the all red and all no's. So at least it didn't find any vulnerable statement that may be allowed by the application. So probably this web application firewall will be very good protection for any of the web applications. So, and now we compromise all of those scenarios. So we compromise the on-prem ID, which is connected to Azure. We compromised the virtual machines. This virtual machine with Windows didn't work because of the, we should run those commands one by one, but for the sake of time, I run them in parallel. And I compromised also this modern application based on the PaaS services. So one last slide with the content that I want to give a commentary about, and then your questions if you have them. First, if you want to avoid AD4's compromise, what I did in the beginning, you must take care of your AD Connect, because quite often I see the misconfiguration in the company when they allow middle-level administrators manage their AD Connect server. So please keep in mind, AD Connect is for domain administrators. Allow access to it only for domain administrators. And also, when that's very important to allow only for domain administrators. Also, I had stolen credentials, and to avoid that, I recommend you to use special workstation for administration. It's PAW if you can. Will be a nice idea. And also, don't give too much permissions to administrators in the cloud. I mean, on-prem as well, of course, because the less privilege they have, then better. You may use also just-in-time administration and do not have just permissions by default. Also, if you want to avoid trying commands, principle of least privileges don't give even reader right to the resource if it's not necessary. Shell upload, function modification, disable FTP. Disable FTP for app service and functions, because probably you don't use FTP. You use some continuous deployment integration, but why do you need to have FTP enabled? Azure SQL connectivity, disable public access. Yeah, it's still possible to get into, but much harder. And finally, web attacks, you may avoid them with web application firewall.